All right, let's jump right into a concept that might just change how you see some of the biggest, most stuck arguments out there. It's called the boundary of method. And honestly, it's a powerful key to understanding why certain debates feel like they're just going in circles.
You've been there, right? You've seen it. These huge debates about faith and science, or even between different faiths. It can feel like a merry-go-round where no one ever gets off. Both sides have their facts, their evidence, but they just talk right past each other.
Well, the source material we're digging into today offers a super simple but really profound answer. It suggests that the problem isn't always the fact. The problem is the tool we're grabbing to do the job.
And this analogy just nails it. A microscope is amazing, right, for seeing things you can't see with your naked eye. But it is completely, utterly useless for telling you how hot it is outside. And when it fails at that, you don't blame the microscope. You just realize you asked it to do something it was never, ever built for.
So, this brings us right to the heart of what we're talking about today. It's all about knowing what your tools are for and knowing their limits.
So here it is, the big definition, the boundary of method. Think about it. Every way we have of knowing things, whether it's science or history or even philosophy, it has rules. It has a playing field. The boundary of method is basically the foul line. It's the point where that tool stops being useful or even legit.
Let's make this real. Take science. In its lane, it is an absolute powerhouse. You want to know how old the universe is, what causes a certain disease? Science is your tool. But step outside that lane, and you get these huge questions like, what's the meaning of life? Or does God exist? Science, as a method, just doesn't have the equipment to answer that. It's not designed to.
And hey, this isn't just a knock on science. It's true for every method. History is incredible for telling us what people in the past wrote down, what they clearly believed. But can it prove that a prophet was actually inspired by God? Nope. It can only report that people claimed he was. It can't verify the miracle. It can only verify the report of the miracle. See the boundary?
This quote just sums it all up, doesn't it? Intellectual honesty isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing the limits of your own tools and not trying to force them to do a job they can't.
Okay, so that's the theory. Let's put it into practice. Our source uses the approach of Joseph Smith, the founder of the Latter-day Saint movement, as a case study for what it looks like to really respect these boundaries.
The core idea here is that Joseph Smith didn't try to use the wrong tools. He didn't try to prove God's existence in a lab. Instead, for the big questions about God, he said there's a specific tool for that job, and that tool is revelation.
And the order here is absolutely everything. According to the source, the process was crystal clear. First, you get the information through revelation. Then, and only then, you bring in human reasoning to help organize it, to understand it, and to figure out what it all means. You don't reason your way to God. You reason about what God has revealed.
So what did this look like in practice? Well, it meant you didn't expect spiritual truths to fit neatly into scientific boxes. It meant you treated Scripture not like some closed philosophical textbook to be solved, but as a living record of communication with God. And maybe most importantly, the final invitation wasn't, let's argue about this. It was, here's the method, go try it for yourself.
Now, this image from the source really sets up the central conflict for us. On one side, you have an approach that starts with preset doctrines and traditions, and every new fact gets filtered through that lens. But on the other side, it presents an alternative, an open exploration of revelation where the meaning is found in the text itself. This contrast is the perfect setup for our next case study.
So, let's flip the coin. The source now turns to the formation of the doctrine of the Trinity, and it presents this as a case study of what it believes happens when a method boundary gets crossed.
Okay, and this is a really crucial point. The critique here isn't about theology itself. The source isn't saying it's wrong to talk about God's nature. No, the focus is entirely on the method, the specific tools that were used to build the doctrine of the Trinity. It's all about the how.
So here's the heart of the argument. The source claims that early Christian theologians, in trying to make sense of the Scriptures, reached for tools that were outside of the biblical world. They brought in concepts from Greek philosophy, heavy-duty ideas like substance and essence and consubstantiality, to create a logically precise definition of God.
And this slide just puts the two approaches side by side. The source is arguing that these are two fundamentally different questions that come from two different methods. One asks, what has been revealed? The other one asks, based on our philosophy, what is God logically allowed to be? It's a subtle but massive difference.
Now, of course, a very common and powerful response to this whole line of thinking is that the Trinity isn't a philosophical invention at all. It's a mystery that was revealed by God.
But the source makes a very careful distinction here. It says, look, a revealed mystery is something God tells us is true but doesn't really explain. Like, here it is, deal with it. It then argues that the Trinity is different. It's a doctrine that is explained in incredibly precise detail. But, and this is the key, it's explained using the tools and categories of Greek philosophy. It's the explanation, the source says, that crossed the boundary.
So, we've gone through two very different examples. Where does this all leave us? What's the big picture here?
It really boils down to this one central idea. We can't just look at the final answer somebody gives. We have to look at how they got there. The method matters just as much as the conclusion. Is the tool actually right for the job?
And we are right back where we started, with that microscope and that thermometer. So many of our biggest arguments might not be about who's right and who's wrong. They might just be about a fundamental disagreement over which tools we're even allowed to bring to the conversation.
And that's the question I want to leave you with. It's one thing to see these boundaries in huge historical debates, but what about in our own thinking? Are there times when we're trying to use a tool from one part of our life, say data analysis from work, to answer a question about purpose or meaning that it just wasn't built for? It's definitely something worth thinking about.